Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for joining us this evening. We're having a different type of stream today. I am joined as always, however, by American Ostracon. Thanks for coming by, man.
It's a pleasure to be here, Auron, and congratulations.
Yeah, it's awesome. No, this is a celebration stream. The channel hit 5K subscribers here sometime last week, and that was pretty awesome. Been doing this for less than a year, so it was nice to see it kind of grow that quickly. Haven't really done any of these yet, but I figured 5K is when a lot of people celebrate, so I figured it was a good time to go ahead and do that. Thank you, everybody. See some congratulations. I appreciate it. And so we're going to be doing a Ask Me Anything stream tonight. We're going to go ahead and start off with one or two articles that I had snagged just recently from the last day or two, things that had happened, just to let people kind of come in and get situated and everything. But we'll be taking questions from chat. So, if you have any questions that you'd like either myself or Ostracon to answer, just go ahead and put them in the chat there. I'll do my best to try to grab them. If I miss yours, please just be patient. I'll try to go back and grab everything. But that said, let's go ahead and talk about the first article while we let everybody come in. So I don't know if you saw this, but recently it got released that the Pentagon tried to create memes, and it took them 22 days to get one done, which I thought was pretty hilarious.
Obviously, they should have gone to some privates or specialists, and it would have got done in 5 minutes.
But. Yeah, I feel like they have people who are totally capable of doing this. But hold on one second and I'll bring it up.
The military playing in a more active part in the culture war is embarrassing and terrifying.
Yeah, all at once, right? Yeah, it's everything you didn't want from the government. Can you see the article okay?
I can see the article. Yep.
Okay.
The article.
Yeah, so the Pentagon created this meme right here. This is what's going to take down Vladimir Putin. So I hope you guys are ready for this particular piece of meme warfare. But yeah, I think the best part about it is not just how horrific it is, but also that it managed to take them the 22 days to workshop a meme. I'm sitting there on image flipping about 30 seconds, and mine I feel like do better. But I don't know. What do you think here, Ostracon? You think this is going to win the battle against?
So it's a bear with candy. It's like a Halloween candy, and it says it's blurred out a little bit. Okay, I get it. So it's.
I think it's supposed to be different types of malware. Is I understand.
Okay, but it's. I mean, to quote Meatwad, it's. I get it. It ain't making me laugh, but I get it.
Yeah. No, I just thought it was amazing that. I don't. What possessed them to not only make something that bad but take that long to make it, and this is why people are like, why do you think
Grandpa got on the computer again?
Right? It's like,
look out!
Somebody discovered clip art. Oh no!
No, it's the official like I said, the fact that the military seems to be taking a more active approach in social media and memes and things like this, again, is laughable on one end because they're doing such a poor job of it. And there's no subtlety to it. It's not clever. But the fact that, there's no 3-4-star general twiddling his thumb saying, why don't we take a more active role in this? It's somebody in the civilian government has encouraged this, and they're like, well, okay, if this is what the kids are doing these days. And it's just really kind of sad and pathetic and frankly embarrassing. And it's this is a terrible thing to say because I'm take a lot of pride in my military service, but I'm honestly kind of glad I'm out at this point.
Yeah, I think anybody who's looking at what's happening right now is probably glad that they're not having to make some of the decisions that are probably coming up for a lot of people.
I am not embarrassed by my service, but I am definitely embarrassed by what the military is turning into today.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important distinction because you don't want to fall into this, especially this really like leftist trap of, well, if people are honorably serving something, then even if I don't like the thing, I need to hate them and I need to, throw shame upon them. Like, don't get me wrong, like there are shameful things one can do, but I think you need to be able to understand, like you need a warrior class, you need a military class, and you need the kind of people who have those values and are made of that kind of stuff. And so you don't want to denigrate that. You want to understand that you can honor and respect that in people while also understanding that the only thing they have to serve at this point has unfortunately become something that is embarrassingly and unfortunately also possibly dangerous.
So those people still do exist. I will say I work with some of them still to this day, but they are definitely muted in their opinions if they're going to survive in today's modern military intelligence culture.
Yeah, and I mean, they're also just people who are born to that kind of stuff, and they're just going to do it no matter what, right? And so you do have those people who are just going to go along to get along, and like you said, if they want to survive, even if they have kind of that spirit, they're going to have to tame it to fit in. Especially as it feels more and more like the worst version of a Fortune 500 company corporate culture, as opposed to like a fighting force.
In some ways, the military is a corporation. As far as how it's run, I would actually argue that corporations have actually been run more like the military, and that's why you see that kind of blend or that crossover there. But in more recent times, the military has definitely attempted to take effective managerial components of corporate culture and try to integrate it into the military, which I think is a fallacy. I think it's a really poor decision. But you know what? That's not really my decision to make. You can't run your products, the thing that you produce or the thing that you offer, the skill set you offer should be kept separate from corporate culture, but it isn't. And I don't have those decisions to make.
Yeah, I guess that's what I mean, and especially when when you see like generals talking, they sound more and more like someone giving a TED talk rather than someone who's leading a
Yes.
fighting force.
There's
And this,
sorry, no, not to cut you off.
no, go ahead.
There's just one point I'd really like to make because it's always stuck with me. At the end of the film Patton, and this is a bit prophetic in my opinion, you have Patton and Omar Bradley walking down a cobblestone pathway, and Patton is discussing all of the achievements that his armored corps achieved throughout the war. He captured this many Germans, and they had this many engagements, and they destroyed this much material. And it's like, well, at least they earned their pay. And what Bradley responds back is like, I think it's not enough. It's no longer enough just to be generals. We're going to have to be peacemakers and logisticians and everything. He's like, it's not enough. And politicians, it's not enough to be just a good general anymore. And I think that became very true, where it's not enough just to be able to lead men in combat situations. Generals have definitely moved more towards being a more generalized political figure, for good and ill in a lot of ways. I think there's some good out of it as well, but not as much good as bad. And that's just the modern world in that way. Anyway, it's always stuck with me.
Well, I think that generals are always managers to some extent, right? Like that's literally
sure. I mean, they're not physically in combat most of the time, but
right.
The emphasis on combat has definitely been reduced since the Second World War.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely see a shift in the mentality, and I think the adoption of civilian both political and corporate cultures or priorities into a lot of this, which I think goes to something that you and I both talked about, just the two of us. But, I had Last Things on for that talk, and I know you really liked his video because he talked about, the deterritorialization and the reterritorialization, where you take something from the sacred into kind of the market and commercial, and it kind of loses that sacred and becomes kind of coarse and commodified. And you had made that, the connection to the military with that, and I feel like that's something that I think you can see very clearly in the attitudes of the generals.
So yes, we had that discussion offline, and that's definitely something I want to dig more into, but I don't have enough alcohol in me right now to do that.
Yeah. No, we don't have to go deep in that one, but I just thought
that one. No, I 100% agree, but that's a very existential talk that I want to have with you.
Fair enough. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look. Looks like we're stacking up some questions here. So Will W says, "Are you going to get an interview with Mr. Yarvin?" So yeah, I get asked this every once in a while, and so I'll just go ahead and say it again, if for people who maybe haven't heard me say it before. A couple things about interviewing Yarvin. One, Yarvin tends to prefer to talk to people who aren't super familiar with his work. He tends not to come on channels that are very familiar and have done a lot of talking about his work. The Good Old Boys might be the one that's maybe a little more familiar, but most of his have been on podcasts that aren't really directly related to NRx or anything like that. So I don't even know if he'd necessarily come on. That said, I'm also a little hesitant to do it, not because I don't think it would be interesting, but I do think that there is, like, as I've heard Yarvin say himself, there is a little bit of the, too much of the input mixed in with the output. If you have the people who are kind of looking at the work and analyzing the work being involved in the, with the guy with his analysis, it's gonna kind of cross the streams. It's gonna mess up the process on both ends. I think there is some value in keeping kind of the work of Yarvin and the people who are working off of it and developing in different directions from it separate. That said, I wouldn't be against it if he was interested in, but it's not something I'm actively looking for, really. Maybe one day that'll change, but honestly, I'm trying to kind of expand different influences. It doesn't mean I'm like, Yarvin's no good and leave him behind or anything. I think he still has extremely valuable things to say, and I think they're worth understanding. But the bulk of Yarvin's work that has been super impactful for me was his earlier work, and I'm trying to kind of expand, into different areas as well. I don't just want to focus on Mencius Moldbug and make that the only thing we use to understand stuff, because at many people have pointed out there are quite a few deficits in there. There's a lot lacking in a number of areas, and if you only focus on that one, you get myopic on that one author or those one points and hashing to death those ideas, then you kind of lose some of the value of it. Another one here. Mr. Thiel says, would it not be helpful for NRx to formalize their publications, something like collecting some of the foundational or canonical writings in some ebooks, or better yet, in print?
Oh, it seems like a terrible idea.
Well,
I know what he's getting at. I understand.
Yeah. So there's a couple thoughts on this. A couple people have had thoughts on this. Some people say, actually, it's good that everything is spread out because it creates a certain barrier to entry. One mistake I think sometimes people make with Yarvin and some of these other NRx ideas is they immediately like get them and then understand them and then run out and try to tell like all their friends who are watching football and stuff. And this doesn't mean like you can't, it's not say, oh, the normies can't grasp it. But yeah, to some extent, like this is highly autistic stuff. It's a lot of stuff that a lot of people either, your average Fox News viewer is not only not going to be interested in it, they're not going to take the time to really sit down with it and understand it. That said, I think it is useful to actually collect some of this stuff in a place where people can get a hold of it who really are interested in investing time in it. I don't completely subscribe to people who are like, oh yeah, no, it needs to be on 97 esoteric blog pages for it to make sense. So I am actually hoping, and this is not a promise, but I have been in contact with some people who said they would be interested in looking at a manuscript of exactly what you're talking about there. And so I'm hoping in a few months, once my real life stuff has died down a little bit, I'm hoping to start trying to kind of convert at least my video essays into something that could be a printable like essay collection that would be like an introduction. I don't think I'd be laying down a whole lot of new work, but I would at least be translating kind of the stuff I've been doing into a more readable format, so someone would have like an introductory book to go to, and it wouldn't just have to be chasing down a million different blog posts. So maybe that will happen. I hope so. I think it would be wise. Obviously, Yarvin's trying to do something like that with Grey Mirror, though I think really honestly, I think Yarvin's better off writing one-off blog posts. Like if you read the stuff off of Grey Mirror, his stuff that's kind of fired off as a reaction to people is often his best stuff. It's often the stuff with the deepest insight. And that's really, when you look at many of his best posts on unqualified reservations, they have the same feel to them. So I don't know if he is, some people aren't book writers, and that's okay. Some of the best writers never really wrote full, complete books or didn't do it very often. Some of the, you look at somebody like Thomas Carlyle, he certainly wrote full books, but most of his best stuff is collections of essays. And so we might just be better off with bound collections of essays. But of course, it's also hard to find people who will print some of that stuff. So that could be an issue. But let's see who else. We got some more here. Oh, we got a bunch of them. Sorry, guys. Give me a second as I scroll down. I didn't realize we were stacking up so many questions here. Have you read any of this stuff yet, Ostracon? I know you've watched some of the videos, but I didn't know if you're familiar with any of the writings yet.
I have not. I would say I'm not particularly. I mean, I understand some of the NRx movement, but I'm definitely probably not as I'm definitely not as knowledgeable as you are about it. I mean, I get the gist of it, and it makes sense as far as the way things are going, and it's about the only thing that does make sense. But I got to be honest, I'm not quite the intellectual you are, man. Like I never have been, and we've known each other for a long time, and I itch towards action, which is obviously not the thing to be doing right now. But
I mean, but it will be eventually, and I think it's it takes all kinds. It's okay. Not everybody needs to be. Not only does not everybody need to have their nose in the book the whole time. It's probably much healthier that a much smaller portion do, and more people have your outlook. So.
Yeah, when I joke about this, you handle the strategic. I'll be here for the tactical.
So Jared Armstrong says, do you think people are going to become aware as more statistics come out about the anti-Asian hate crimes, such as the majority of those perpetrating them? I'll be honest, Jared, I don't think so at all. I think the only reason that this is even a storyline is because it had to be at some point. These are attacks that obviously the media does not want out there. They don't fit the narrative they want to be pushing right now. The only reason they had to come out is that they were clearly and regularly targeting a minority group that is in theory supposed to be part of the progressive stack. But we all really know that, Asians aren't treated that way by the progressive movement. They're too successful. I
don't think they're going to get a lot of traction on this one long term.
I don't. I think they'll continue to try to push this idea, the narrative that they've been pushing, that this is somehow connected to to a history of white supremacy in America. I think they just have to they have to make those sounds. It's not fooling anybody, even normal people who hate Trump that I talk to are like, when they see an article like this, they're just, what is this? Like, are you joking? So don't get me wrong. Like, a lot of this propaganda does work on the average person. but I don't think this one is. I think the only people parroting this and believing any portion of this are the people who are already so deep in the tank that it really doesn't make a difference. They just they know they needed to say something. They needed to make the narrative happen. And so they did, but I wouldn't take it too seriously.
So Bolero 393.
Oh, hold on. I'm working down here in order.
Yeah.
Just so I don't get lost.
I want a question.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you see one you want specifically, I'm just working down in order. All right. Death by Cognitive Dissonance says, Auron, I have my doubts that most people in our circles are going to be able to ride the tiger in any long term since they're already demonizing Trump base as domestic terrorists. Yeah, man. I mean, obviously, this is the goal of progressives, right? If you don't have the enemies you want, you go ahead and you manufacture them, right? Like, this is what they want. This is what they're trying to do. And so I understand what you mean. I think that's the only viable option for now. And I think that's what you have to go with. I think ride the tiger is the right advice. You need to do the best with what you have. You need to, do what we've talked about before. You need to better yourself, your own situation, your own standing, your ability to help other people in your community. You need to build connections. But I think outside of that, that's the only option that's really available to us right now. I know a lot of people don't like that advice, and I get why. But remember that this doesn't mean doing nothing. This is really important, and I'll say it over and over again. This doesn't mean not doing anything. It means making sure that the things you're doing are smart. They're things that are going to make you stronger and going to make the things you care about stronger and safer. They're not things that are going to feed the narratives and the desires of people who are opposed to you. And so that's really what we're talking about.
Right now, it's just, let's see how long we can eat the middle class. For how long?
Yeah, I mean, that's yeah, absolutely.
And that's once they've completely destroyed the middle class, then they're, we'll move on from there and we'll see what the next stage is. But that's the goal.
And another one, how can we adapt to opposition that can create its own false flags to clamp down even harder? This seems to be an effective response to the grill pill. So yeah, again, the fact that they control the narrative apparatus is 100%, right, and that is a giant problem, and they can manipulate, like you said. I mean, like a previous question asking about the attacks on the Asian community and the narrative that's being sold there, right? Like, they have the ability to push these out, but every time you battle against reality, you're pushing your credibility. And I'm not saying that they have much left, and I'm not saying that slows them down a whole lot right now, but it always costs you something to do this. And force feeding people something that is absolutely and obviously the opposite eventually has consequences. I had a discussion yesterday with someone, again, who hates Trump, didn't like him at all, is probably leaning left, for sure, but had serious questions about COVID and lockdowns. And they were just talking to me, and they're like, "Do you really think this stuff was necessary? Like, it seems ridiculous." And so, these things do eventually cost the regime something. I'm not saying that there's going to be a big wake up, but eventually people either don't believe or they just stop listening altogether. And once the energy of that falls out, once people aren't passionately being driven from news story to news story and pushing their energy into the system, I think that does make a big difference. It looks like we got one here for Ostracon. Ostracon, can you comment on the new PT standards going from gender neutral back to lower standards for females, or was the game up once they let females in the first place?
So I don't know what you mean really by what the game is up, but as far as going back from gender neutral to different PT standards, lower PT standards for females as opposed to males, I mean, I'm not surprised about it at all. I've the minimum number, at least when I was in, it was the minimum number of push-ups for a male to pass was the maximum number of push-ups for a female to get 100% on her push-ups for that particular event, because there's push-ups, sit-ups, and a 2-mile run. I'm a big dude. I never maxed out my PT test. And there's something that always kind of stood with me is there were smaller men and women than me who did much better on their PT test. But when it came to actually going on ruck marches or having to, do soldiering type activities, funnily enough, it was always me who had to carry the extra pack, or it was me that had to carry the machine gun. So I learned a lesson in that day where it was just like, okay, it's great you are doing great on this PT test. I'm still the one picking up your pack after you fall out on a ruck march. And it was a day that I learned the difference between Army standards and what soldiering actually is.
Yeah, I think and this is always the problem with, spreadsheeting everything, right? Is you miss a lot. Yeah, exactly. It sounds good. It looks good on paper. It probably hits some metric somewhere designed by somebody who's supposed to be an expert. But that's much different than seeing the thing in the field and seeing effectiveness and seeing how, things actually hang together when, they're working. So
which gives me confidence in some ways that no matter how bad things get, there's always going to be a few good men.
All right. So Narco Republican, $5. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate the donation. Specialized mimetic warriors to defeat China. Yep. Looking forward to the Mexican cartels taking over California. By the way, congrats on 5K.
I just like Narco. You don't have to answer or not, but your flavor of smartassery just screams ex-military. And I've seen you on post multiple times. And I always kind of wanted to know if you've served or not. And I'm sorry, I'm making this a little military centric, but it's just you're saying things that have been said by people I have worked with in the past in a very specific way, and it does make me wonder sometimes. But it is very funny.
Nice. Yep. All right. On Anders here, sorry if I don't know how to pronounce all those, says, Auron, are there any aspects of neo-reactionary thought that you have struggled to reconcile with your Christian faith? Congrats.
That's a good question.
For 5K subscribers. It is. That's a really good question. So here's the thing about neo-reactionary thought, and it's something that I try to encourage people to understand, but when you get talking, it's easy to mix the two together. I even do it when I'm talking, and so it's easy to understand how that can happen for people, too. When you're looking at neo-reactionary thought, you need to remember it is first and foremost a tool of political analysis. It is not a system of morality. It's not a system for determining metaphysical truth or values. It is purely a cold look at how power works in as an objective way as possible for a human being. And so when you're looking at how NRx gets applied, that can be very different, right? So knowing the most efficient way to do something or the most effective way to do something doesn't necessarily make it the way that you should do something morally, but it might be the most practical thing. And so when we're looking at NRx, we're looking at a very Machiavellian analysis. And we're saying, okay, what actually works? Like, get rid of the moral expectations, get rid of all the kind of things we layer on, all the stuff that we bring to the table from all this, and what works in these situations. How does power actually work? If we forget what we've been taught in school, if we forget how we're supposed to be treating everybody, how does power actually work? And then from there, once we understand mechanically what we're dealing with, then we figure out what to do with it, right? I always say, it's one thing to know how the car works. It's another thing to know how to drive it and where to go with it, right? And I think that's the key difference, because there are things that are most effective and most efficient according to NRx analysis that I would be morally uncomfortable with doing, right? And also important to remember that leaders are in a different scenario, right? Like, there are a lot of things that individual leaders have to do to secure power or to run their country that we would be appalled with, right? And that's and understanding, like, if you look at anything throughout history, you can look at like a basic thing, like if you take over something, you should kill all the heirs of the people who are in power, right? Like, nobody my Christianity says, oh, that's horrific. But if you're looking at a Machiavellian analysis, like, the first thing you should do the vast majority of the time is just wipe out anybody related to anybody who used to hold power. Like, do
it right away.
Yeah, and don't hesitate, right? Like, if you know anything about history, it's filled with people who did not do this and suffered mightily for it, right? And so if we're just looking at a direct analysis of what you should do, that's something we need to have, but we need to also understand that the application of it is different, and also understand that it is, understanding this doesn't necessarily have direct implications in our personal lives, because I'm not going to be the king of America, and I'm not going to have to wipe out like a line of people who used to be kings of America. So having
modest.
But no, vizier at best, right? But so I'm never going to have to make that personal application in my life. So are there implications from NRx that are troubling in a Christian sense? Yes, absolutely. But does that mean that they I then are making a choice between necessarily like, the values of that and the values of NRx? No, because NRx isn't a value system, right? It is. And that's a problem with Yarvin. I think a lot of his analysis really is, he says it all the time, we need to be nihilists. We need to be like value free and neutral. And that makes him very good at what he does, is analyzing power. But then when he gets to his positive solutions, they're always kind of garbage, because he doesn't have anything to actually build with. There's no metaphysics there. There's no real morality to be applied. So all of his stuff is very good at explaining how power works and how it tears down and how it, operates, but nothing really good about how to build. And I think it's because the building is in those, the things of outside of logic, outside of power analysis. I think you build with a mind towards these kind of greater goals. Not that the operation of power doesn't still matter when you're building those things. It is still core and essential to understand, but understanding it is not enough. You need something else.
You have to have somebody that you want to follow. It can't be enough just to understand how it operates. There's a mysticism to it. There's culture. There's more to it than just the nuts and bolts of how it functions.
Nobody is spending late nights up working for somebody who like positively analyze something. Nobody's making giant sacrifices for somebody who's really good at an analysis, right? Like those
are important people.
Yeah, those are people you want. You want those people, but no one's charging into battle for somebody just because they're like, and this is how power works. Let's go, right? Like,
woo!
That is not what's going to get you where you need to go. And so I think they're both important things to have, but we shouldn't confuse the two, I think. I think sorry, go ahead.
No, there's something you once said about Ayn Rand, which I think applies to Curtis Yarvin, and that she was an excellent diagnostician. What did you say? It was very clever, but a very poor. She's very good at analyzing and identifying the problems, but her solutions were terrible. Yeah,
very, very good at diagnosis, very bad at cure, right? Very, very good diagnostician. Geez, I can't speak today. It's been a long day, guys.
Diagnostician?
Anyway, very good at diagnosis, very bad at treatment. And so I think that there are things from NRx that you still need to carry through into the treatment side, into the solution side. I think you do need to remember lessons about how power works and how alliances are formed and that kind of things. I think they are informative into that process, but I don't think that I don't think there are no moral claims in NRx that really are going to get applied and are going to make a big, they're not what you're going to build on at the end. Let's see. Paul Cornelius says here, congrats on the success. Thank you very much. And thank you for the donation, $5. Thank you. Thanks for the service. I'm assuming that's for Ostracon here. And also, Movie Bob is quite the catch. Have you received a Seth Rogen DM? Yeah. So for people who don't know, Movie Bob, it depends on how online some of you guys are, but Movie Bob quote tweeted me yesterday on immigration, which was funny because it was a particularly mild tweet of mine, and he kind of answered it in like a good-natured way. It was ridiculous. It was still like as neoliberal as possible. Like, yes, of course we have to have open borders. It doesn't matter if people want closed borders. This is good for everybody. But I do think that I do think it was funny that he retweeted me. And yes, I am waiting for that Seth Rogen where he calls me out. Absolutely. Let's see. Philip S97 says, do you think the U.S. military is being deliberately weakened, or are the people doing it just blind, so its consequences due to ideology?
So yes, it's being deliberately weakened. You should listen to our other talks. I mean, that's a yep, 100%. It's on purpose.
Yeah, and I think it's certainly this is the great thing about progressivism for these people, right? It works both sides of the coin, right? So I think they genuinely would push these values anyway, because I think there is truly, I don't think it's only a cynical calculation for power. I think they have drank their own Kool-Aid, and this really is what the ruling class believes. So I think they would push these anyway, but it also has exactly the effect they'd want, which is to weaken what really could be their only threat of power at the end, right? Like if you completely keep the castle contained and strip bare, then they don't have to worry about it because they're really the only people who could probably dislodge them at this point. And
the
both.
The problem is they're not getting at the core of their concern. I'm not going to say another word. They're not yet affecting the core of the individuals that are the largest concern for them. They can't.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's where they draw from, right? It's the people who completely reject these ideologies that are the biggest concern for the leadership or for the progressives, and it's just, I don't think it can happen. They're too different. They're exactly drawn from the people they despise.
Yep.
So they can attack the logistic structure, and they can attack they can attack the high level leadership, but the ones who are they're most concerned with, who fight their wars for them on the ground, are the people that they despise the most. And I think they're doing their best to try and chip away at them. They may be successful. I don't really believe they can be, because they still have to have a few people left that can actually, fight wars. But those are the ones who are they most concerned about.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we've got a similar question from both Eastern Wind and Stephen James here. Could you do a video on these deficits for Yarvin and NRx? And when is Yarvin going to be taken to task on said deficits? So that's a fair question. I have many times, especially in talks, when I'm having a conversation with people, we've talked about the kind of drawbacks and the deficits of NRx. So it would be far from the first time where I've said what I just said there. Like I've said many, many times, NRx's analysis is great and its prescriptions are terrible. I said that all the way. You can go back to like me and Anamnesis talking in like my second live stream. We said exactly this, like great on analysis, bad on solutions. I've said that many times over. That said, I could probably stand to do one that's more in depth. There are a number of things. Yarvin's assumption of collapse as the thing that's going to 100% knock out the regime, I think is incredibly optimistic. I hope he's right. I think he's got a decent chance of being right, but it's literally the only thing he talks about, and I understand why. It's kind of the only thing you can talk about. But I think that pretending it's the only thing is probably optimistic. Also, patchwork is a problem. His patchwork theory is an issue, especially because it's got to focus on exit. And I've been thinking about making a video on this. A lot of people, we in neo-reactionary circles, we talk about, if you want to fix things, there's really only three options. There's voice inside the regime, there's exit from the regime, and then there's regime change. And we don't have voice, and it's very unlikely that the regime is going to be changing. So a lot of people focus on exit, and so when Yarvin is talking about his ideal society, it's going to be a bunch where basically like you have a bunch of monarchs who have absolute power, but you can exit at any time. So you basically have no voice inside any regime. You are in, but if you want to go to another regime that is running things better, you can go do that at any time. A couple of things about that. One, how are you going to enforce that? Two, the exit problem is a huge one. You literally can't build a society if people are just leaving all the time at will. It sounds great in like a functioning spreadsheet libertarian sense. It's terrible when you stop pretending that people are like rootless automatons with no connection to their homes or families or things that they build in their cultures. So
why would I trust them?
Yeah, that's a huge one, right? And this was all written, especially when the early Yarvin, and still a lot of libertarianism left over in there. So maybe he's changed his thoughts on some of that. He really hasn't been clear about updates on that since. So maybe some of that has shifted. But those are all major problems, and it might be worth making a video, just on some of those problems, I guess. Like I said, I've talked about them a number of times on streams, but I understand not having a specific edited video can lead people to think that, I think that just everything about what Yarvin said is right, or everything about NRx is correct. And I don't think that's the case at all, but I do understand that might be worth making, and that might be something I do here in the future. Let's see. Will
I know the answer.
or MacIntyre win. So the answer is probably not ever. And a lot of people, I don't get a lot of questions of this. I know I'm like the rogue Protestant, with the NRx crew. Most of them are kind of tradcast or Catholic. But I don't normally field, honestly, a lot of questions about the denominations and everything. Just people tend to not be super curious. I mean, the reason I'm Southern Baptist is pretty much the best reason you can have, because my father was, and my father before me, and his father before him, and my entire family is Tennessee Hill people, and that's kind of been my community and my religion my entire life, and the community of everyone who's gone before me. So I'm continuing that tradition. That said, because it's Southern Baptist, we have relatively pretty much the most based Protestant sect. Not to say that there aren't problems with the Southern Baptist Coalition. There certainly are. But as Protestants go, they're the ones that are pushing back on pretty much all of the woke stuff better than anyone else. Again, I'm not saying they're pushing back against all of it. There are certainly problems, and I don't think they're immune to the problems. I think the erosion will unfortunately continue. But of the Protestant sects, they're the ones that are pushing back the most. Honestly, if I was going to go Orthodox, I'd probably just go. If I was, I would just go Orthodox if I was going anywhere. Which is what, brother. Yes, which is what Ostracon is. So if I was going anywhere, I'm functionally honorary Greek anyway at this point. So
yes, you are.
just go ahead and complete it. Like everybody just thought I was Greek anyway. So
I mean, we're more Catholic anyway. They broke off from us.
Yeah, so that's the attitude, right? That's what you're supposed to believe.
Attitude.
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to believe as an Orthodox. All right, let's see.
What's the difference between the Catholic and the Baptist at the liquor store?
The Catholic will look you in the eye.
I love that joke.
All right, so let's see. Hacks. Oh, and thank you, by the way, Will, for your donation. I'm sorry, I forgot to thank you for that, but thank you very much for the super chat. Hacks / says favorite era and area of world history to read about. I'm definitely Roman history, 100%. Ancient history in general, I'm much more interested in. I have been. I am familiar with American history quite a bit, to the point where I've taught it. But ancient history, classical history is where I'm strongest, especially Rome. That doesn't. I'm not exhaustive on it, but if I was going to be able to speak on anything, that's definitely where I'd be strongest. My weakest is probably, honestly, is probably Middle Ages Europe. Hilariously enough, for a lot of people.
Mine too, actually.
Yeah,
I also used to be a history teacher briefly, my medieval history is not that strong. Definitely, Roman and ancient Greek. I think I really like to break down smaller conflicts and study them. I mean, I'm biased based on my background, but I think the Peloponnesian War is a really fascinating study of how these culturally similar groups went to war with each other, and in many ways was like it really was a civil war in a lot of ways. And the Roman Empire is just, it's so huge and there's so much, and it's really a fascinating subject. And then even just late Roman Empire stuff is really fascinating. And another interesting case study is I know it's part of the larger conflict of World War II, but the Greco-Italian War, that's part of that larger conflict, is something that I've studied quite a bit. And I find a really interesting small piece of history of how using the resources available to you to wage effective war against a superior enemy can be done. And I think that's a very interesting subject.
And something it's a part you really, it doesn't get the attention it deserves, really.
Yeah, it's it's not much talked about when it comes to World War II history, but the Greco-Italian War is a really fascinating and interesting part of that conflict, and definitely worth even just going on Wikipedia and reading through. It's got one of some of the one-liners that the Greeks have during the war are some of my all-time favorites. Real quick story: the mayor of a town on this Greek island, after the conflict was over, there was an Italian occupation force, and the mayor refused to surrender to the Italian military that were occupying, and literally you refused to sign the paperwork. They had guns to his head, and he told them to piss off. And so finally is I'll surrender to a German. I won't surrender to an Italian. So finally they get the one German officer on the island and drive him up. And he's got a German shepherd with him, and he goes up, and this mayor surrenders this town to the German shepherds, claiming it better to surrender to a German dog than an Italian man. Just the testicular fortitude when you know they can kill you at any time it makes me proud of my heritage.
All right. So Dan Cooper says, congratulations, brother. Thank you very much, man. Appreciate everybody who has been subbing and liking and sharing and watching. We really appreciate you guys. It's been great to hang out with you. We've got Mulbuggy and MK Ultra Victim, which is a great name, by the way. You and the gang should debate third positionist. So, I've talked to a number. I think Endeavor at this point is a third positionist. I think, I think as much as Morgoth describes himself in that vein, he might be in there as well. I don't know. At this point, I think, better at having conversations with and trying to figure out how to do kind of, I guess, the stuff that, the things that we share. I don't tend to punch right terribly often. If somebody wanted to talk about some of those things, I guess that'd be fine. But I haven't really been like scrounging for debates with anybody on that. We've got Thomas Cuba here. Congratulations again. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Let's see. Herlock Shomes, can you mention some of the non-political books you like, both fiction and science fiction? Absolutely. So obviously, I'm a huge fan of Heinlein. We did a Heinlein stream. I've read a ton of Heinlein books. I would highly recommend Moon is a Harsh Mistress. I would highly recommend Starship Troopers. I would highly recommend Farnham's Freehold, if you can get a copy anymore. I would highly recommend the collection of his short stories. I would highly recommend Philip K. Dick. Love Philip K. Dick has written like every movie that you love that's sci-fi. You might not even know it. Minority Report and Man of the High Castle and Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? It's Blade Runner.
Frank Herbert.
Yep, of course. Yeah, Dune. I love Dune. I've read every Dune book, even the terrible expanded universe later ones. Like some of the early expanded universe ones are good, but the later ones are just awful. But I love Dune, so I read them anyway.
They are bad, but I've read them.
C.S. Lewis is absolutely my favorite author. I've read.
We All Have Faces, man.
Oh yeah, Till We All Have Faces.
One of the best books he ever wrote.
Life-changing book. You should read a sci-fi trilogy, obviously. Out of the Silent Planet and Hideous Strength and Palindra. You should be reading all of his kind of more Christian-centered stuff. Is an excellent book. Let's see.
G.K. Chesterton is infinitely quotable.
Of course, Chesterton. Let me think here. What's some other? I like Neil Gaiman. I know it's kind of cringy with some. It's easy. Kind of sits a little more on that kind of artsy stuff, but I like Neil Gaiman stuff.
Hey Raven, say nevermore.
Yeah,
F you.
I love American Gods. I love that book.
I enjoy that book too.
I've read it through a number of times. I really enjoy that book. Let's see. It's non-political. I really enjoyed history. I like reading history. Storm Before the Storm, if you've never read, by Michael Duncan, is a great book about Roman history, explaining the events leading up to Caesar. So it's going to talk about Marius and Sulla, and it's going to talk about everybody, all the events that were leading up to kind of the fall of the Roman Republic. And so those are all really good ones. Of course,
Edith Hamilton's Mythology. If you're looking for a start into mythology, that's a great book.
Okay,
that's just like that should be your start if you're not well versed in mythology, which I think is important if you're gonna be studying political philosophy. Definitely start with Edith Hamilton when it comes to just getting your basic Egyptian, Greek, Roman, and Norse mythology. Great book.
Yep, and I could do book recommendations all day, so I should probably move on here. But another one from Mulbugian. Have you read Nemesis by Chris Bond? So I'm familiar with that book. Right now, I just finished On Power by De Juvenal, which is, as I understand it, the basis for that book. I guess he's updating De Juvenal in that book. So I have not read Bond, but I have read De Juvenal. I just made my first video on it. You'll probably see me posting more book notes and probably at least 2 more videos coming out of De Juvenal. I've already got one written up and probably another one that I'm going to do as well after. So you won't probably see me doing work on Nemesis, but I will be doing work on the source material of De Juvenal. I usually prefer to read the original material before I read someone's kind of building on top of it, though it might be worth going back and looking at how he updated it once I kind of have all of my thoughts. I don't want, this is the input and output mix up, right? I don't want someone else's takes on something coloring mine. So, for instance, I don't watch a ton of Keith Woods videos, but he had one talking about Chris Bond stuff. And once he got into Juvenile, I immediately stopped playing it because I was reading Juvenile at the same time. Because Moldbug was heavily influenced by Juvenile, and I wanted to understand it. So I don't want someone else's opinion to kind of mix with mine, if that makes sense. I want to give my analysis and my opinion first, kind of unfettered, and then if I want to incorporate somebody else's in, then I'll do that. One for Ostracon here. How will the military stand in case of serious secessionist settlement down the line?
Isn't that the $1 million question?
Right.
Yeah, it's a hard one to answer.
Right.
I'll put it like this: when the chips are down, who are the people that you rely on in your life? Because I think that's the answer. That's as much of an answer as I'm willing to give, I guess. Is when you need to rely on people, who are the people you rely on? Because it's not this doesn't turn into a logical argument. This is a passionate argument. This is an emotional argument in a lot of ways. It's not, you can't logic your way through something like this. And it's going to be, who can you trust and who can you rely on? And I answered this once before, and it's a question. You have to look at these people in the military, not as a monolithic organization of one choice, but of individuals having to make a personal choice based upon their experiences and biases and predilections. And it's should this day come, it will be a personal choice for every individual in and out of uniform.
So an answer for your question from Narco Republican, indirect answer for an indirect question. My country has been at war for a while. I have never seen a single day peace. Neither have my parents.
Understood.
So, yeah.
Yep, that's about as much of an answer as I would expect.
Yep. Hold on. I got a good one here. You've been drafted. The purple has been thrust upon you.
Listen, I want to go. I want to pull a Cincinnatus, and I'm not going to say it, but
just head back to the farm.
I mean, you've heard me say it before. I want my 5 acres, and I want to build my house.
Yep.
And I want to be left alone. And I know you've given me a hard time about this, Auron, and I know it's not realistic, but it really is what I want. It's just personally, I want to sit around and breed. That's my goal. And be left alone. It's not a bad goal. I don't know if it's realistic, but yeah, I know what I want in my life, and I'm not going to get into all the details. You know what they are.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Same gentleman here, Bolero 393, donation for $5. Thank you very much. He says, Ostracon, make Byzantium great again.
So I'll tell you why, and in case anyone ever wondered why I chose the name I chose for my handle, I'll explain it. This seems like a good time. It's because I've spent a long time away from the United States in my career. I've been outside of the U.S. a lot, and coming home recently, after I came back from my time, especially after combat, I really didn't feel like I fit in anymore. And for a long time, I struggled with if that was because there was something wrong with me. And I think what I learned over time is it's not that there is something wrong with me. It's that I was shown what the world is really like. And then I came back to the United States and it doesn't make sense to me anymore, which is why I think we really started talking about this to begin with, Auron. I think that's kind of was, at least for you and me and having our conversations, that was the impetus of even ever having or starting these discussions in the first place. was things did not make sense to me anymore. And I didn't want to believe it was just there was something wrong with me, because I don't think there is, not in that way. And so I am American first and foremost, despite my background. And I've served my country a long time and continue to do so in many ways. But I really do. An Ostracon is a clay tablet. And in the city of Athens in ancient times, they would exile one individual, whoever name was written most, and placed in the ostragos. So the Ostracons are the clay tablets, and then the ostragos is the actual vessel of which they placed them in. And whoever's name came on most was exiled from the United States. Exiled from Athens for a period of 10 years. And it's something that kind of stuck with me. And I do feel often like an exile in my own country, which is not a great feeling, but that's where the name comes from, and that's what it means.
And ironically, that's also, what Moldbug talks about. Like, you kind of have to end up feeling like you're an exile in your own country. And, he says it for tactical reasons, but I think a lot of people feel that way for cultural, reasons.
It feels spiritual to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, I think you're far from the only one who is feeling that. And I think a lot of people in here can probably identify. So Zero Kev for $5. Thank you for the donation, man. Did True Dil Tom have an influence on you? I know a lot of people who came over to NRx because of him. I'll be honest, I have no idea who that is. And I missed a lot of I'm not an old school NRx guy, to be clear. Like, I literally started reading Moldbug February last year. So I am relatively new to NRx. There have been people who've been doing this for a long time, who have been around for a long time, familiar with the scene and the people involved in it. I'm not. So if there are a lot of people. I discovered Jim's blog a few months ago. Like some of these people were supposed to be key. Honestly, I am not familiar with. And that's the thing about NRx, is even if you are literally making content about it and in contact with a lot of people who are big in the scene, you might still be completely unaware, because we don't have that centralized, published, text. It is just a scattering of blogs and things. So it's very easy to miss some of the important thinkers or other things. You could read all of the open letter and have no clue who Nick Land is, and never ever read the Dark Enlightenment. But I think Dark Enlightenment is essential. I think it's it's a companion piece that basically unlocks the other half of NRx. And I think if you don't read it, you're missing huge parts of NRx theory. But I could easily see how someone could never even touch it. If I miss anybody, if I'm unfamiliar with anybody, don't think it's because I've spurned them, or I don't think their work's good, or they're not contributing something. I literally may just not know about them. Rhonda's Shandy here says, do you consider progressive family and friends part of your tribe? If so, how do you prepare them for the collapse to come? Is it even possible? So I'll say I am super lucky in that I really have almost no progressive family. And part of it is because we're
must be nice.
It is. Part of it is because we're pretty Christian. Part of it is because we're pretty much exclusively from the deeper South. But also part of it is just sheer luck. We really do not have a super progressive family. I mean, I have people who are certainly more left-wing than I am, but that's not very hard, right? On the scale. But I don't really have anybody who's hardcore progressive, anybody who's even really deeply progressive. I have plenty of friends like that. I do have plenty of friends who are progressive. And when I say part of the tribe, honestly, yes, to a point. And here's the point. If things shake out and I think that they would be with me because we are friends and if I think their political positions are fashionable, then yes. If I think that their loyalty to me is higher than their loyalty to political positions, then yes. And to be honest, most are. Most people are not die hard political, hardwired. They might signal a particular direction because it's fashionable or it helps them in their career, or it's just what they picked up by osmosis and TV. But honestly, more and more of my friends are coming up to me and saying, "Hey, man, that stuff you've been talking about? Like, can we hear a little more about that?" As things have kind of gone the way they're going. So there's less and less of that. But if people are really super dedicated and that is a passion of theirs to be progressive, honestly, at this point, we probably just don't get along, and we probably haven't invested a lot of time in each other at this point anyway.
I mean, when I still believe when push comes to shove, people rely on the strong people in their lives, regardless of their political opinion. And a lot of these individuals who are progressive in your family, again, I know I keep saying when the chips are down, but like in reality, when things affect them in their daily life and they're not just reading about it on TV, I think you'll find that they know what's correct in their gut, even if they're not willing to say it. If that weren't true, then this is then why do I don't know. If that weren't true, why do women yell at me on one end and then like still ask me out on the other? So it's like okay, yeah, sure, you have those opinions
versus revealed preference, right?
Exactly. It's like, sure, you keep saying that I'm about as conservative as a guy as you can get, and you're still contacting me and you're still wanting to go out with me. So sure. You have those opinions. You're obviously not that politically invested because in your eyes, on paper, I'm the bad guy, but you're still there.
All right.
I was trying to say that as politely as possible.
No, I know exactly what you meant. I think everybody else probably did too. So Purple, loved your last video on monarchy. Will you make any content on feudalism? So yeah, Purple, honestly, I'm probably not going to break down feudal societal structures. If you want good videos on that, Academic Agent has great videos on that. I was more interested on the growth and expansion of power and how it interacts with monarchy. I don't get me wrong. At this point, I would probably, if you ask me, like, what do you think works the best? I'd probably say some kind of monarchy probably is the best way to go. I certainly am not a fan of democracy at this point, but I'm not really interested in like returning to feudalism proper and setting up everything exactly the same way it was before. I'm not saying that isn't the way to go. Maybe it is. But my purpose in making that video was more to follow Dejunil's argument about expansion of power and how the king uses, how the people are benefited by the king's motivations in that scenario. My next video on Dejuvenile will actually be only tangentially related to monarchy. So I don't know if monarchy is going to become a theme on the channel, but I know feudalism probably isn't. But there are people who are doing good work with that. Let's see.
The English, they love their monarchs.
Yep.
I can't blame them, but it's
well, they can't. It's hard to love their current monarch set, but
yeah, it's. I made the mistake once while I was living in the United Kingdom of just joking about how England is okay and not maybe the world's greatest country, and the girl bit my head off so hard. Like I was actually proud of her. For in one way I was proud of her, because like, Jesus, lady, it's just a country. Like, take it easy a little bit. No, it's the world's best country, and it's like these are the reasons why. And I'm like, okay, like I'm not here to burst your bubble. It's just it's fun.
I appreciate that level of pride.
Oh, I do too. And it was more fool me for even trying to joke about it.
Yeah. All right, Will W, $10 Canadian. Thanks for the content this year, guys. Use this to buy some beers for the two of you. Thanks, man. We really appreciate it.
What's your go-to beer?
Go-to beer. I mean, that's a good. Probably. I like stouts. I'm a big stout fan. I also Irish Reds. My beer taste goes that way.
Remember that place we used to go to that had all you could drink Killian's? I'm not going to say what it is or where it is.
But yeah, nope. Yep, I certainly remember that.
Back in the long ago when you could pay $8 for all you could drink Killian's Irish Red.
Yeah, as much as that as we could probably remember. I don't know how much I can remember at this point.
Happier times.
Yeah. All right, so next one here. Question Everything says, I found your video on 4chan. I appreciate your insight on hierarchy, but found your lack of solutions vexing. So, whoever's posting my stuff on like 4chan and Facebook and like like conservative websites, I don't do this. I'm not the one posting this stuff, but thank you, whoever's doing that. I see the referrals coming back to the channel, so appreciate you guys sharing out the content wherever you put it.
You're penetrating the culture.
Well, I mean, 4chan, certainly
you're penetrating the subculture
to the Chan boards. So here's the thing. If you are frustrated by insights without solutions, I've got bad news. There's a lot of them here. You're going to get a ton of that. I certainly want to move towards solutions. There is a lack of value in endless critique. So I'm not looking to just get on the criticism hamster wheel. That said, solutions are extremely hard, and people way smarter than me can't figure them out either right now. B, did I go with letters or numbers? I always hate that when you start going 1, 2, and then you start lettering.
I think you went with letters.
Okay, so B, there is a lot of NRx is really, like we've said before, power analysis. And so insights and understandings of how power work are our main stock and trade. You may say that means that it's kind of a dead thing because there's only so much you can do with that, and you might be right. But that said, those are the tools in my bag at the moment. Maybe I'll get better tools, and we'll see that. The other thing is, I'm happy to move on to solutions as soon as people learn the lessons in the first place, right? Like, I see this all the time. People are like, when are we going to get solutions? And then they're like, okay, well, I guess we'll just try to get like a new president elected. It's like, guys, have we learned nothing? Nothing at all? There's so often the case that I see people who are like, yeah, we've learned everything we can from NRx, and then they immediately just turn around and do the exact opposite of what NRx says. If you disagree with it, that's fine. But if you're telling me, oh, no, I understand and I have absorbed the lessons of NRx, and then like next week, you're back on the bandwagon of like, yeah, I'm totally going to be able to work inside the system that is designed to destroy me in order to, work the mechanisms of the Constitution exactly the way they were taught to me in high school. Okay, but I don't think you learned the lessons, right? So I'm certainly looking for more solutions, but hopefully we get enough people to look at the problems first. And I know it can be exhausting if you've known this stuff for years, you're like, oh, why is everybody still repeating this? But remember, not everybody's where you're at, man. Like, a lot of people are still jumping on board. They don't totally understand what's going on. And so there's still a lot of value in making that kind of content. And I do think there are people who are going to probably be better at making solutions. And I think it's also important not to expect one person to be able to do everything. I see this all the time. People are like, well, why aren't you guys organizing this? Why aren't you building that? Like, so one guy who makes videos on the internet should also be the guy who does political organization, and also should be the guy who like writes computer programs to, and makes servers and sets up things for people to do like, and also should be the person who's like caring for spiritual needs of people in the community. Like, if you want to get involved, guys, plug in. If you don't think there are enough solutions, get involved. Like, and this is not just for Question Everything. I'm not attacking them at all here, but I'm just saying, like, if you see something that's missing in the community is young. Jump in, guys. You can still do this. Like, there are still valuable roles to be filled. Get in there. Don't just sit back and wait for your favorite content creator to also turn into a master politician and, computer programmer and political scientist and philosopher and, author and everything else. Like, there's much work to do. Go do it.
Not everyone has to be all things.
And no one can.
And they really can't.
Yeah. From the good old boys here. Hey guys, thanks. Awesome. Thanks for watching. $10. Appreciate the donation. Congratulations to 5K more. Really appreciate it. I know I've shilled for the good boys pretty much every opportunity, but just in case, for some reason, you have not been listening to the good boys, you should go do that immediately. You should be on their Patreon. The good stuff is behind the paywall. I mean, there's plenty of good stuff that's not behind the paywall, but a lot of good stuff there too. Angela Nagel interview is particularly good. You should really go listen to that. Well worth your time. Some people saying, good old boys, phenomenal. Had a great conversation with Molebug. Absolutely. So we appreciate you guys coming on. They're great guests every time they come on, and we definitely appreciate that.
I want to eat barbecue with them. I think that'd be fun. Just go eat some barbecue with them.
I've got a feeling that American Beef Bog know where to get some good barbecue. Let's see. Do you watch Monsieur Z Auron? Nope, sorry. I do not know what that one is. I'm pretty online, but I don't know if I'm that online. Let's see. From Blatnick1, thank you for the donation. Are they generally surprised that their fighting force isn't made up of leftists? Also, best state to live in when the collapse starts.
I don't know about the best state. I'll answer that part first. I don't know about the best state, but rural is the answer, I think, or at least in a smaller community that's more self-reliant. I mean, that's the easy answer, right? Find cities and stay away from them. As far as them being surprised, no, I don't think they're surprised at all. That's why they're actively changing the culture of the military.
That's 100%.
I mean, if you want to go into more we keep pimping this, but like our earlier talks, like go into great detail into this. This has been a long time coming, and something that I've seen happen for years, and it is intentional. And no, they're not surprised at all. Maybe those who are uninformed or not very particularly observant are a little surprised. But no, this is the dismantling of how the military functions is completely intentional.
Yeah, so best state, I think there's going to be a couple different ones. Obviously, like some of the ones out west, some of the ones that have more based governors, though it looks like the Dakotas aren't as safe as we hoped they were. Obviously, Florida is in a weird spot where like DeSantis is pretty based, but I don't know, the demographics of Florida and the voting power of Florida do change over time, though it did go surprisingly for Trump. So even, there is a high percentage of the Hispanic population that is actually voting Republican. I don't know that makes things better at the end of the day. Honestly, the answer is probably the place where you can get as self-sufficient as possible.
Yep, I agree.
Wherever that might be. I don't know what state that might be or where that might be, but the place where you can get as self-sufficient as possible. Where do you not have to rely on a super woke corporation where you have to go in every day to earn your money? Where can you, make sure that you and your family are going to be able to stay safe and secure? Where are you able to, gather with friends and family? It doesn't do you a lot of good to move to the, middle of, I don't know, Wyoming or something, away from all your family and all your support system, and no connections to anybody, right? So like, I think the answer is probably as close to your family as you can, while also making yourself as resilient as possible and as able to work outside, kind of being as unreliant on the system as you possibly can be. Death by Cognitive Dissidence says, if there's a collapse, can I live in your basement, Ostracon? I'm a low maintenance guy. Don't worry.
You can live on the property, but there won't be a basement where I'll be living.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
You can have yes, you can live nearby.
Build the compound, or don't build the compound. That's how you end up with.
I know. I know.
All right, guys. Well, we're starting to run lower on questions. So thanks, everybody. Oh, here's one. All right. I do have a story we're going to tell before we go, though. We're going to tell the Arno story before we go.
You're the better storyteller.
Yeah, I'll tell that story
Okay.
as our kind of celebration to end here. But we got a few more questions that came in. So someone said, "Will you debate Vaush?" So I've seen Vaush debates, and I'm not sure why you would. I'm not saying that I don't think that it would be possible for me to like outmaneuver Vaush or something. Maybe not. Maybe you would trounce me. I don't know. I'm usually more here for discussions than like, you know, full on debates. Like I don't think I'm changing anybody's mind by going in and embarrassing Vaush or him embarrassing me. I think that those are largely unproductive conversations. I have talked with leftists. I've invited them on. I just had a Swedish labor organizer. Malcolm was on my last stream. I had Amy, she's a full-on communist. She was on my channel. I've been on other channels of people who are left-wing. So I'm certainly fine with having discussions with with people who are left-wing, but I prefer there be ones where they're actually interested in having a discussion rather than just like trying to dunk on people. I don't find that particularly interesting, but who knows? Like if I got the invitation, maybe I would, but I don't think I'm anywhere on Vaush's radar right now, so I'm not particularly worried about it.
It's hard to have a legitimate debate with somebody.
I just don't think at this point, if your intention going in, so the reason to have formal debates is to win the audience, not the person, right?
Yep, agreed.
The thing about guys like Vaush is they've designed their streams and their setup to basically give them like this insane home court advantage of and it's not like you have like a moderator who's going to step in. Like Vaush is just going to scream at you for an hour and a half if you get on there. From what I've seen, I'm not a bread tube guy. Like I'm not like the distributist, the poor guy. Like I think he did something in his past, that he feels he needs to make up with by torturing himself with bread tube. I'm not a guy who watches a bunch of left-wing content on YouTube. I'm just not super interested in it. When I find someone interesting on the left to talk to, I do 100%, but I'm not really, seeking that out a ton. But that said, I mean, again, I would have the conversation, I guess, but I'd really only be interested in the conversation. Have you read The Final Pagan Generation by Edward Watts? Many modern readers say that the tactics wokes use to gain power is similar to what Christians did to overpower the pagans. So no, I have not read that one. I have heard people say something similar to that before, and it wouldn't be surprising if for only that wokeism or progressivism, whatever you want to call it, is it's a Christian heresy. It's a way down the line. It's many times removed over. It's a bastardization of Christian values. But I think it's weak when people pretend like there's nothing about Christianity in it. It's certainly ripping all the value of Christianity out, and it's what Christianity looks like when there's no God and there's no loyalty. It's the ugliest possible version. People who are big fans of paganism or just anti-Christian will often say then, well, that means Christianity is the problem. Obviously, I very much disagree with that. I am myself a Christian, and I think it's pretty essential. I think pretty much anybody who likes Western culture likes Christendom. That's what Western culture is. Even people like Morgoth, who I don't think is a super committed Christian or anything, but even when I was having this discussion with Morgoth on one of my streams, Morgoth said exactly this. He's like, look, Christianity is what the West is. If you don't like, if you think you need to get rid of Christianity to save the West, just say you're getting rid of the West, because that's what you mean. And so does that mean that, does that mean there's not something to learn from what happened when Christianity kind of developed and took power over the pagans? No, there could absolutely be something to learn from those steps. But I don't know that makes sense to the people who then make the leap and say, oh, well, that means that it's to blame. That's the problem. Let's see. What Dutton said there. I think Ostracon will be back here any minute.
That's all the that's
okay. He's back. Okay.
I don't see any more questions.
Okay, so let's go ahead and tell the story. So this is going to be the last thing we do here. If anybody throws a final question in, we'll get to it after this story. But I wanted to close this story because it's
it's
one
like
of my
your
favorite
story.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So Ostracon and I met playing Warhammer 40K.
Yep.
For those of you who have been on my Twitter or have seen seen the streams and stuff, they probably know at some point I've talked about how much I enjoy Warhammer 40K. And so Ostracon and I met playing Warhammer 40K, and we were like the two guys. I mean, there were a couple guys in the shop who weren't super nerdy, but we were kind of the two guys who like had worked out and were kind of more socialized and that kind of thing. And so as we started to make friends with the other people we're playing 40K with, we started recruiting them to kind of like go to the gym with us. And we were doing like MMA training. So we were lifting weights and doing MMA training. And so we're at the gym doing this, and the boxing club for the local university is at the gym training in the same mat room we're working out with our MMA stuff with. And so, we're there, but we're a bunch of nerdy guys. Like, like there's a bunch of people wearing, World of Warcraft t-shirts and that kind of thing. Scruffy beards, that kind of stuff, talking about their new 40K army. As we're training, the boxing guys have been, keeping an eye on us. And at some point, we kind of get tired training against each other because, Ostracon and I have sparred against each other a bunch. And Ostracon is basically an ogre. He's like 6'4", and he's just a massive mountain of a dude. And I'm not a small guy, but I'm not an ogre. And so, like, we've done this fight a million times between each other.
It gets a little old after a while. We know how it ends sometimes.
Yeah. We have sparred against each other so many times, and everybody in the group at that point had. And so Ostracon wanted to try out his boxing. We've been doing MMA, but he wanted to try out his boxing because he's more of a hands-oriented guy. I'm more of a kicks-oriented guy.
My background was boxing before that.
Yeah, before we had started training, you were bringing boxing you were bringing the boxing, and I was bringing the Muay Thai and the Jiu-Jitsu.
Correct.
And so he's like, all right, I want to try out some of my boxing against somebody else. And when we got over there in the gym and they saw us, Ostracon walks over and he's like, hey guys, can I spar one of your trainees? Can we get together? And the boxing coach is like, oh yeah, because now the nerd has come over and challenged him, like the guy who's over there, doing, jujitsu with a bunch of people in World of Warcraft t-shirts.
The audacity.
Yeah. How dare he come over here and challenge? And so he says, he comes over and he says, oh yeah, we'll do that. And, so we're expecting them to line up somebody, who's been training with them. And all of a sudden you just hear him be like, Arno! And around the corner,
a dude comes into the room we haven't seen yet.
Like a movie scene, like he was just waiting in the wings outside the mat room. Arno, come in here. And Arno comes around the corner, and Arno is the largest Puerto Rican I have ever seen in captivity. Like, this dude's traps had traps. They were there were little violins being played on his trap muscles. This guy was
a man was built like a brick shit house.
I don't even know what cycle of steroids he was on, but you want some. Like, he was massive, massive dude. And so he's like, Arno, come in. And here's the thing you got to understand about Ostracon is when he's like in public, he looks terrifying, but he acts like Opie. And And so he's like, yeah, sure, I'll fight him. And so not only is like this guy being challenged, but also he's coming in and Opie's the one who's gonna fight his giant dude. And so they go ahead and put like the headgear on, which is already weird for our Ostracon because we never used headgear because we're grappling and we're using tiny gloves for MMA. So he's getting hit with tiny gloves with no headgear on. And so they strap him on and they get ready to go. It's like, all right, go. And the guy literally, Arno just like screams and runs forward, like a cartoon.
Like bull rushes me.
Yeah, 100%. And so Ostracon just walks him back, like just step, hit, sidestep, hit him, step back, hit him, sidestep.
I thought we were supposed to be sparring, not in a full combat to the death.
Right. And so the guy like gets it handed to him in the first, 20 seconds. So he's like kind of dazed and recouping. And then like he like charges in again, and Ostracon's just there rope-a-doping him. And then as the guy comes in, as he comes in again, he wraps up Ostracon, and Ostracon's assuming like the coach is going to come in and break. He's going to declare a break there. And then when Arno comes in and he thinks he's coming for a break, Arno immediately just steps up and gives a cheap shot, like hits him right on the side of the head. And as he hits him on the side of the head, Ostracon's just standing there dazed and confused. And all of a sudden, everybody's wondering what's going on. Like we're wondering if we're going to get into a full out one side rumbling against the other as he's like besmirched his honor. But Ostracon's just like, yeah, no, that's fine, and he just goes right back into it. And the guy just keeps getting his face pummeled over and over again, and it's just absolutely hilarious. Hold on 1 second. And so it's just absolutely hilarious as this guy just keeps going in for more and just gets absolutely pummeled. And so eventually he just goes ahead and gives up. Like eventually, like it's like 2 more minutes left, 2 more minutes left in the round or whatever. And the guy he refuses. He quits. He tries to rip his headgear off. He's got the gloves on and he tries to rip them off. But he can't because the gloves are on. He can't get the headgear off. And as soon as he's like screaming, like, "Get this off of me! Get this off of me!" And as soon as the guy finally comes in and gets the headgear off of him, he immediately runs to the end of a bench that's running the length of the gym, sits down, grabs a bucket, and just vomits.
It was a good day.
Yeah, it was absolutely hilarious. So that is the story of Ostracon battling the largest Puerto Rican in captivity and winning that fight.
And it was after that day, if you remember, that the girls in the class started coming up to us to ask
100%.
for unboxing. That was fun.
All right. Pedro Garcia says, will you start growing some of your own food in the future? Yes, absolutely. In fact, I already have a garden, nothing crazy, but, the stuff you'd expect, tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers and all kinds of stuff like that. So just a basic garden, nothing extreme. I do hope to homestead more in the future. We're actually hopefully buying a house here soon, me and my wife. And if that goes well, then obviously we'll be able to do much more permanent stuff. So we're definitely looking forward to that. And I'm pretty sure Ostracon has the same answer there.
Well, I currently do not grow anything, but yes, once I find my 5 acres, I will definitely be having a garden.
Yep. Hunger for $5 says, congrats, Auron. Thank you very much. And thank you for the donation. Excellent work. Is Ben Shapiro a net negative? And can boomer cons be useful to more right-wing dissident movements? Yes, Ben Shapiro is absolutely a net negative. He is the safe he's the safe catch for people. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like there are people who probably become conservative because of Ben Shapiro and then realize how kind of useless he is and moves on from there. So is in that way, he has like step in the right direction, probably, but is he a net negative? Yes, I think so. Absolutely. Can boomer cons be useful? Yeah, these are your people. Don't be confused. These are your people. Just because they don't understand where you're at right now. I was functionally a boomer con a year ago, right? So the BoomerCon to NRx pipeline or whatever we want to call this kind of corner of the internet is very real, and they're not all going to get there. They're not all going to take that journey, but
they don't have to.
But they don't have to. These are your people. Don't confuse them, with progressives who hate your guts. These are the people who either are going to agree with you or they're going to be on your side at the end of the day. Artemis for $5 says, "You both have to forgive me, but I've never seen a Puerto Rican above 2-1. Are you sure he wasn't a
We were as surprised as you were.
I
mean, it might as well have been the Roman arena at that point, the way his entrance was made.
He was not extremely tall. I think he was only like 5'8", maybe, but he was as wide as the door. Like,
the dude was massive and strong.
Yeah, like he was certainly strong. He was not very good at boxing, and he got it handed to him. But he definitely not a guy you would choose probably to run into in an alley.
Built like a brick shithouse.
Pedro again here. Do you think Jehovah's Witness and Cult of Scientology could be useful to us?
No.
I'm going to be honest, Pedro. I don't know where they would land on any of this, and I am not. While I do think that it's important to make the friendly coalition the way you can, I'm not really here. If there's a cynical place you want to go for power, you probably are already on the left, right? Like, they have all the power. If that's why you're there, if that's what you want, then it already exists. So if that's what you're looking for, then you've already got that. I'm not saying that the right shouldn't be looking to gain power. It absolutely should. But I don't see the need to cynically use these people to and use them to maneuver, in that way. If they are natural allies, then they'll be natural allies. If they aren't, then I don't see the need to try to artificially create those. And Ryan, what is the best 40K army and why is it the Imperial Guard?
They're not bad. They used to be terrible.
Well, that was the army you started with. That's what you were playing.
That was my first army. I loved them, but they weren't great.
Yeah, I mean, they were the best army here recently. They were absolutely broken. Anybody who wanted to play the game at all basically had to bring a section of Imperial Guard just to get the command points and stuff you need. But I don't want to turn this into a Warhammer theory crafting stream. Maybe one day, but not today. We're already over time. So that said, guys, thanks for coming by. That's most of our questions. Thank you so much. Many generous donations, a lot of great questions. Had a great time talking to you guys. Really appreciate the well wishes from everybody and the congratulations. It's been really fun doing this. I really enjoy it. I really appreciate the support we get from everybody. I know Ostracon has really enjoyed coming on and everything, and I know Ostracon coming on for the streams has really improved the channel, so definitely glad to have him as well.
No, it's an honor and a privilege to be here, and we've already got a few more talks lined up for us, so plenty more to come in the future.
All right, guys, that said, thanks again. Thanks for coming by and watching. There'll be more content coming on the channel soon, and I'm assuming if you're here for the subscriber celebration, you've probably subscribed. But if not, go ahead and do all that stuff. Everything you need to find will be in links below the video. And as always, guys, we will talk to you next time.